All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Convergence Healing Podcast. My name is Peter Bedard. I am so happy to have you guys here. And, my purpose in doing this podcast is to give you examples of how to live, give you ideas, things to look at, things to chew on. I come from a place where it's been a very dark world for me, and I've gone through that experience, and I get to be here with you guys now. And that is part of my joy. And living in that joy is really a lot of the focus that I like to bring to people, because so many people are just trying to be happy, telling themselves to smile, telling themselves to just be happy and get over it. Well, it doesn't work that way. You have to mine all that darkness. You have to dig into it, go underground, pull out the gold that is in it for you. So if you're depressed, be depressed. It's okay. And know that you can get out on the other side and embrace that joy. Joy to me is an umbrella like emotion. If we look at the emotional spectrum of human beings, joy embraces all of those emotions. Joy is that thing that is present in us. Even when we work with children, when I've worked with young children or people that are on their deathbed, there's these experiences, even when they're in pain, of joy. It shines through. Joy is always present, but sometimes it gets covered over. It gets pooped upon, right? It gets dumped upon, and we have to learn how to wipe all that stuff up to let that joy be revealed. So my guest today is coming from a wonderful organization called TV Guestbird. I want to give a plug out to them. Go to tvguestbird.com if you're interested in expanding your media presence. But first of all, our show is being brought to you by, so the Convergence Healing podcast is brought to you in partnership with Earthwalk as part of their Global Wholeness Clock. Earthwalk's mission is to create a global culture of peace, and we are tending to the moment of joy on that clock. To find out more about the Wholeness Clock and other shows and programs that they offer, please visit their website at earthwalkunited.org/wholeness clock. Once again, that's earthwalkunited.org/wholeness clock. So our guest today is the effervescent Jeanette Yoffe. Did I say that? I asked you earlier if I was saying it
Yes.
right. Did I say it right?
Yes, Yoffe.
Yoffe, Jeanette Yoffe.
Yes.
And I love Jeanette. Jeanette came to me.
Oh.
She had sent a bunch of her speaking points to me, and they really grabbed me. And I was like, yeah, of course. Like I just looked over them once, and I'm like, yeah, she's a guest. And so I wanted her on because not only does she have a story of the gold and the garbage, but she also has a story of how she's extending that gold, right? Her background is as a therapist, but she became a therapist after being adopted and after becoming an actress and after tapping into creativity and using creativity in order to heal. So, Jeanette, will you tell us a little bit of your story and where you come from and what brought you to this moment?
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me, Peter. Um, this topic is very near and dear to my heart, and I've just feel so passionate about the work that I do and helping children and families because I was one of them as a child. So my heart, just every child and every family I meet, I just feel it's a kinship experience, a kindred experience that
Now,
I,
I'm going to interrupt just for a moment
yeah.
because we didn't say what you were part of.
Oh,
So, your story is that you were given up for adoption at 2 years old in New York City,
yes,
and
yes.
that is like a trauma in itself,
Yeah.
at such an early age.
Yes, yes. Actually 15 months old. So, so surprisingly, I didn't learn a lot about my story until I became an adult because children who are adopted, we're not allowed the information about our birth families. It's archived, our original birth certificates are archived. We don't have answers to what happened to our family and who we are and where do we come from. So, to give you a little point about my experience, my birth mother is actually from Argentina and she was a dancer in Buenos Aires. And
Mm.
I didn't know this until I found her only 12 years ago. So, and I didn't understand why I was so gravitated towards the arts and expressive arts. And using my body. I did not know that she was a dancer. So she came to New York on a work visa in the 70s to be a dancer in New York City. And she met my father and they had me. And she actually also had a child with another father in Buenos Aires. So she had another, so I have an older
You have a
sister.
half sibling,
Yeah, half sibling.
and performing or the arts is in your blood.
Exactly. It's in my blood. But I didn't learn that until much later, until after I became a therapist, because no one helped me understand how to really utilize my expressive arts, because my adoptive family they were not artistic. They were not. My mother was a designer, a fashion designer, working in Manhattan in the fashion district, but she left to be a mother, to be a parent to me and my two siblings. So she left that world. But so my birth mother came to New York City to be a dancer, and here she was having a child, married to my father. Then I was born. We don't know exactly if there was some use of drugs or untreated PTSD, because the reason why I became a therapist was I really wanted to understand the trauma that my mother had experienced, because she did have untreated trauma, unresolved trauma that I think came up upon after I was born, and then after my brother. I have a brother as well, a younger brother who was born after me.
From the same mother, your younger brother?
Same mother, same father in New
Got it.
York City.
Uh-huh.
And so um, something happened, and she started exhibiting um, symptomatic symptoms of schizophrenia.
Mhm.
And that's when I was removed from her and I was placed into the New York State foster care system. And I
Mhm.
went into a family in foster care on Long Island, and I was with them for 6.5 years because they were attempting to place me and my brother with our biological family in Argentina, but it fell through. So that's why we were in the system for so long. So I didn't learn this because I was very confused as a child. What's happening to me? I knew that this was not my family. I had a different name. I was already in school. Kids knew I was kid on the block. I had the token key lunch, all the negative stigma. I always walked around with this cloak of there's something wrong about me. I didn't know how to differentiate what happened to me from who I am. And I didn't know how to celebrate who I was. But I always had this spirit inside of me that was just always screaming to come out. And I always felt that inside of me. But I didn't know how to master that sense of I can feel good and proud about me, because I had so much shame about me and no one helped me understand this. So
Yeah.
um, becoming a therapist just really helped me piece out a lot of what I experienced. And I always come from the Carl Jung
Mhm.
experience of going into your own experience, really understanding it, understanding your diagnosis, understanding all the pieces of your story and putting them together the way you want to put the tapestry together of your life. And that's what I've really worked to do. But I did remain in foster care till I was 7.5. I then went to another family to be adopted. And so I had to leave this foster home that I formed a deep attachment to. I thought that I was going to stay with them forever. I didn't. Went into another home, and then we adopted two more siblings and
Wow.
fostered another
Wow.
foster
Okay.
with us. So my mother was a savior. She really wanted to help kids that just did not have families. And then I wanted to be an actress. I didn't know why, but I learned that it was easier for me to be somebody else than it was to be me.
That's what
And
I wanted to talk about. You had actually brought up in here, and you have a book that you published, this
yes,
work that you created. I love when people mine their pain, right? I think that our pain, our life circumstances, the experiences that we're born with are actually gifts, and they're things to actually learn from. Like pain can either tear us down and destroy us, or it
Mhm.
can raise us up because we're learning and growing and expanding through it. And in that
Yes.
healing process, right? You were able to take this pain and through the performing arts, you created a one-woman show that was
Yes.
really about getting to know this pain. One of the processes that I use in my practice is kind of gestalt, where we actually start working with the pain. We ask it what it needs in order to heal. And that could be like a depression pain, it could be an anxiety pain, it could be a physical pain, right?
Yes.
Whatever it is, addiction, we actually sit down and give it a voice. We allow it to have a voice because most of the time we're telling it what to do, right? And I would imagine in your case, your therapist or the doctors or the family members that you were born, brought into or something are telling you, your friends, how to be, how to fix the quote problem, right?
Yes. Mhm.
And instead, what interests me about your story, and I'm reading into it, is that you kind of asked it, you kind of let it be expressed, the pain itself. And in expressing it, allowing it to have its own voice, there was a huge healing that happened.
Oh,
Could
boy.
you tell me a little bit in our audience a little bit more about that?
Yes. So it was very cathartic. So I had this dream, and I was in a theater company, and they encouraged the actors to write. And I had written one poem about being in foster care and adoption. It was called The Changeling, and it was maybe 10 lines. And I found that cathartic. So when I was intrigued when they asked the actors to write. So I had never written before. How do you write your story? Or whatever, and write anything, write anything. So I had this dream about a little girl who auditions for a family. And she runs out on stage and she's so excited. And it really encapsulated me as an adult also, because I was auditioning for everything. I just wanted to be wanted. And it wasn't about acting. It was a deeper psychological pain and hunger. And it was a psychic hunger of just wanting to be needed and wanted. And what happened for me was every time I went on an audition, I would leave, not get the part for whatever reason, but I would be so wounded and so hurt that it became this other experience for me. What is auditioning and being wanted? And what is this all about? So the dream was, I said, okay, I'm going to write about this little girl who goes out on stage and she gives her all. And then the auditioner is asking questions about her. Uh, what kind of foods do you like to eat? What are your hobbies? Tell us more about your skills. How many families have you been in? Have you ever auditioned for a family before? So I just wrote the piece. I didn't, people didn't know it was about me personally, and it kind of organically connected to my story. And when I performed it, just improvised it for the theater troupe, people were blown away and they said, wow, what is this? It was the first time I became transparent, from not actor to human. And I said, this is my story. This is what it felt like to just go into homes and go, hi, pick me. I'm good enough. See, this is how good I am, because the two families before didn't keep me. So it became so cathartic when people embraced what the vulnerability that I was portraying through this little girl, and they felt it on a very deep level. And I think universally we all want to be wanted, we all want to be loved, we all want to be part of a family and be seen, heard, and received. And this for me was a big turning point in my life, because I always ran. I was an actress because I didn't know who I was, and I was running from myself constantly. So this was, now I was integrating me and acting together. And so I was encouraged, and I just went home, started writing the whole story from beginning to end. And I would cry, I would handwrite, I would type it. And I just said, I felt so inspired because I saw how this impacted other people. And I took a huge risk, but it was worth it. And I think part of this healing process is finding that safe space where you take that risk because you're worth it, and you are worth it, and your story is worth it. What you've been through has impact. And it took this little risk of just sharing this dream, and it turned into my whole play.
That's
What's your
beautiful.
name? Who's your daddy? And I just devoted myself. It was hard. There were days when I would rewrite and have to think about some hard things. And, I was the kid in foster care that I did not feel that I was good enough. And I was not invited to the parties on the block. I was that other kid. You didn't know that I was here, and you didn't know for how long. Um, I had two older sisters who were biological to my foster parents. They were doing a mitzvah, an adopt mitzvah, taking in a child through Jewish childcare in New York City. And I love them. I'm still connected with my foster family. They are part of my life. They helped grow me up. And so, one thing that stuck out for me was my foster sister had her name on the wall, and it was official that she lived there, that this was her home, and I always wanted my name on the wall. And so when I was adopted, one of the first things I told my mom was, I want my name on the wall. And she was confused. Why do you want your name on the wall? So because my sisters had their name on the wall, I want to know this is mine. This is mine to keep forever. Because one of the things that I did in foster care was I would write my name with crayons on my bedroom floor, and I would get punished for it. And my foster mother did not understand what I was doing through my behavior. And as a
Mhm.
therapist today, I tell parents all behavior is a form of communication. Children do not have adult characteristics. They can't come out and say, I'm hurting. I need you to know that this is my home, and I need to know that this is forever. And I'm going to do that by writing my name on the floor. Okay.
Yeah.
So
It's
there's
a
so
very primitive extinct. It's a
oh,
very thing like putting your name on something is like claiming it. It's saying this belongs to me. And it provides a sense of safety and security.
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yes. And I had dyslexia. So I wrote J backwards on the floor.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Oh.
I had language challenges because there was so much I had taken in up here.
Mm.
So actually writing my story helped me organize. I had to like look back and go, yeah, I need to put this in its place. I need to organize this. It really became this whole cathartic experience, and it changed my life. And I realized I want to be a therapist.
Now,
I
as
want
a
to work.
therapist,
Yeah.
I know that you use creativity as part of your practice, which you're speaking to my heart. I adore that, right? um, this idea that you use art now as part of your therapeutic process, right?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit how art can actually help create a sense of safety and identity.
Yes. So because a lot of trauma is stored in the body, we don't have the words for it. Children need the expressive arts to externalize the internal. And there's a lot to contain. And what art does is you're transferring the internal experience out into a container, whether it's, and I have my book, my other book, Working with Traumatized Children and Families in Foster Care and Adoption, is where I have a lot of my interventions. And one of the interventions is my family tree, but we put doors on the family tree so that children know that there's boundaries to sharing your story. So we externalize, who are all the people in your world? Who are those who raised you? I have kids' family trees that are 12 huge poster boards long, and we show through colors the feelings of what it felt like to be in those families. What images did you, because a lot of trauma is stored in the right brain, which is the creative part of the brain. It's a tsunami in there. You can't put language to it, but you can put image, you can put color, you can put patterns the feeling that it feels like, what it looks like in your mind, the chaos. So it really helps kids self-organize through art in other ways because they can't always put words to it. And it provides a container because you're using a box. One of my interventions is the question box, putting all the questions in the box and holding it there. I make sad bags for kids, anger bags, stress bags, to put all this stuff so there's a place and a space where it can be held and we're seeing it and we're all witnesses to it. That's when someone's a witness to your pain, you're no longer alone. And
Exactly.
Dan Siegel
That's
talks about this. What's
huge.
shareable is more bearable.
Yeah. All right, I need to take a little tea break.
Yes, me too.
This is one of my herbal teas. I have, and for those of you who are interested, you are, if you're following me, you already know this. There's the convergencehealingteas.com website. You can get all kinds of good teas. Our Get Well, Be Well, which is this one, just such a beautiful color. Our Happy Tummy, our anxiety reducer tea, our sleep better tea. All of these teas are right there for you guys. Convergencehealingteas.com. Just so good. And it's so nice to have a way to actually drink your health, right?
Yes, yes,
Not drink to your health, but actually drinking the health right there.
yeah.
Wellness.
So important.
So, Jeanette, I want to actually check in with you because we were talking before we started recording, and I said, this is a topic that's very personal to me, not because I was adopted, for two reasons though. One, because I have a niche where for some reason I've ended up being blessed with working with a lot of adopted clients who'd been adopted. They're coming to me and they're talking about issues, and then I find out that they're adopted. It's one of those things, they don't bring it up front.
Right.
And once I know that they're adopted, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And they're like, what? Like, to me, as an outsider, it makes absolute sense that they're having abandonment issues and addiction issues, right? Absolutely makes sense. And so it's an important thing to then start shifting into saying, okay, this is what was happening for you. I get it now as a therapist. I can see sort of a bigger picture for
Mhm.
you, right?
Yes.
It's been just a wonderful experience to have these clients because they are different than my clients who haven't been adopted. And
Mhm.
there's different experiences. So to understand that actually gives me something to, in a way, as a therapist, to hold on to and go, oh, okay. I need to understand that there was this, whether they recognize it or not, and maybe not, but often there is a trauma that is associated, even if it's subconscious. They may say, I had a fantastic family. My whole childhood was great, but they're struggling with abandonment issues. It's like it came from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
A friend of mine, a very dear, dear friend of mine who I adore, has adopted two children. His husband turned out to be not the most honest of people and did some, so not the greatest things to the kids. And it was hidden. When they separated, it kind of came out, but the kids were also they were addicted babies. They had lots of chemicals in their bodies when they were born,
Mhm.
and there's a struggle that they've had.
Mhm.
um, I think the experience of not knowing who they are, not knowing where they fit in, having this very mixed message come to them from their adopted parents, right? Being taken care of and being told regularly that they're loved isn't enough.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I'm wondering if you could just address that.
Mhm. Mhm. So there's a whole internal world for an adoptee. And there's a book called The Seven Core Issues in Adoption. And it talks about all these different pieces and parts psychologically for an adoptee that they struggle with. And there's a lot of shame about that because it's not acknowledged in our world yet in psychology. They're beginning because this book actually just came out, Seven Core Issues in Adoption, understanding what's going on internally. And there's grief and loss. And sometimes as adoptees, we don't recognize there's a big, and I talk in parts, there's a part of us that is grieving the loss of our first families, whether we were with them for a short while or just in utero, Babies form attachments to their birth mothers in utero, and birth mothers form attachments to the baby that they know they will have a plan for adoption and will be relinquishing. So they're both having an experience at the same simultaneously, and the baby then is born and has formed this attachment. And there's a book called The Unborn Child, and once you recognize how the baby knows the mother's voice, the baby knows the mother's rhythm, that babies form these attachments when they're born. They want to be with what's familiar. Being born is a traumatic experience, right? Then
Yeah.
you want to go back to safety. However, you're placed in the arms of another mother that, yes, is there ready to love you, but does not recognize what has happened. And it is a trauma for the baby. And there's a book called The Primal Wound that speaks to this. And we need to honor and recognize this grief and loss. And with grief and loss, there's anger. There's a lot of anger because adoptees never got to make this choice for themselves. This choice was made for them. And so a lot of adoptees feel victimized, and also birth mothers feel victimized. No one was there to help me parent my baby. That's one of our biggest problems in our country. We don't work to keep families together. It's a quick foster care and adoption. Well, families need more services. We need to make stronger families in our community. So we have the grief and loss, anger, then there's guilt and shame. And it's interesting, Peter, you said that people don't talk about this because there's a lot of shame, because there's a stigma, the I'm adopted, which implies there's something wrong about me. Because what happens is, for adoptees, when we don't get the story, and the story is the circumstances that happened to our birth family at that time, which made it impossible for them to parent any baby born on our birthday. We need to have objectivity and separate out. It wasn't about us, but we believe on a psychological level, that's the abandonment, that there was something wrong about us. That's why our parents didn't keep us. And I have this birthmark on my leg, and because no one told me my story growing up, and I would look at my birthmark and go, because I learned that you're born with your birthmarks. Did you know that? And I learned that, and I thought, it helped me explain, oh, that's why I didn't stay with my birth mother, because of my birthmark. That's what was wrong with me. But I was a child trying to make sense. Why didn't my parent keep me? There must have been something wrong with me, because children will create a negative construct unless told otherwise. So I'm a big advocate for telling children their story. And the story is what happened to your birth family, so that the child doesn't internalize abandonment. It's about me, and they personalize it, and they feel like they're all wrong, and they can take some pride and shift the shame to, wait a second, I was a good baby, I'm still a good baby, I'm a good person. It wasn't about me, but I only did this work as an adult. I had terrible shame. So there's grief and loss, there's anger, there's shame, there's identity challenges. Because when you're adopted, you don't look like your birth family, and your adoptive family, you're reminded every day of your grief and loss. And when you go to your best friend's house, like I did often, and I see my best friends with her family, and they all look alike, and you see the traits, the characteristics, and you go, I wish I had that mirroring. So it becomes, not only we had go into adolescence with this identity crisis, but we're also questioning and feeling the grief and loss, and just so wanting that connection and knowing. And because we feel alien, we feel like it's just a stork dropped us somewhere, and we're like, oh, okay. Or we just have to adapt. And there's a phrase, we're not adoptees, we're adaptees. We're constantly adapting.
Yeah.
And that actually makes us resilient.
Very resilient. The people that I work with that have gone through this have such resilience. So on that note, I would love to continue this conversation maybe at some point in the future.
And
Tell
that's a lot.
people how to reach you, how they can interact with you. Give us your website, show us your book again. Let us know
Sure.
all about you one more time.
So my play, What's Your Name? Who's Your Daddy? So I wrote it. I actually wrote this 20 years ago, and in 2019, I published it, self-published on Amazon, and recorded it like the play on
Very
Audible.
nice.
And it has sound cues and everything. And I talk from the child's point of view. So I have parents and support groups now listening to it. It's psychoeducational because I go through the whole experience of going through foster care and adoption. So that's on Amazon. My book is also on Amazon, working with traumatized children, teens, and families in foster care and adoption. My website is yoffetherapy.com. I
Can you
have
spell that for us?
YOFFE therapy.com. And I also have my own website, JeanetteYoffe.com. They have different blogs and different things on there, all the speaking that I've done,
Great.
podcasts, and my YouTube channel,
Great.
Genetically Speaking About Foster Care and Adoption.
And are you on Facebook and Instagram?
Oh, yes. Facebook at Jeanette Yoffe, Instagram at Jeanette Yoffe. And I have a nonprofit called Celia Center, which I developed in 2002. And I named it after my birth mother, Celia.
Oh, that's sweet.
And I wanted to do more. You know, I was a therapist working with families one time a week, and I really thought we need a community. And I also felt I need to know who's out there like me because this is a lifelong process. It doesn't go away. These pieces of us, we're always working to shape them, reorganize, make sense, and look at them. And we need others to be witnesses to
Yeah.
our healing. So I created Celia Center. We have support groups. Now they're all on Zoom. So I welcome anyone who was adopted, and birth parents and adoptive parents and foster parents are welcome to come to the group because I bring us all together. And
You're
that's
creating history is actually,
oh,
you're creating roots, connection, history, roots. You're creating that with this center. It sounds beautiful. Thank you so much. I love that. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, you can find out more about Convergence Healing all over the World Wide Web. We are on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and Pinterest. You can find us there. There's convergencehealing.com, convergencehealingtees.com. There's youtube.com, Convergence Healing, and just connect with us. Jeanette, I'd like to invite you to be part of my Facebook group as a contributor. It would be really nice if we could talk offline, but that group is Cultivating Joy, Convergence Healing on Facebook. And I would love for you to share maybe some of these stories. Maybe we can get, a few paragraphs from you. Maybe we can create some memes or some graphics, just really about embracing who you are, owning who you are, and sharing it in that way. Because I know when we share our own stories, we're sharing our healing, and the healing that we experience heals others. So for those of you who haven't tuned in yet, please go to Cultivating Joy, Convergence Healing on Facebook. And is that a yes?
yes, that's a yes.
Great. So we're going to get some contributions on the site from you too.
Excellent.
Thank you. As closing, I just want to remind everybody that this program is brought to you as a joint venture with Earthwalk. Earthwalk's Global Wholeness Clock and its daily moments offer a variety of opportunities such as global community access to live interviews, health and wellness classes, meditations, live music, art, conscious connection, and relationship building classes. Their online wholeness center offers daily programs, and you can find out more about them at Earthwalk United, earthwalkunited.org/wholeness clock. Jeanette, thank you so much for being our guest. You're amazing. I really look forward to seeing and connecting more with you in the future. And to everybody out there listening, thank you for being a light in the world. Keep cultivating that joy. You know that there is gold in the garbage waiting for you. So if you're in a state of sadness or despair, anxiety or addiction, I know, and I'm holding truth, that you, underneath all of that stuff, are absolutely whole, perfect, and complete. And that I can see that in you right now. So with that, I love you all. Thank you, Jeanette. Thank you, everybody. Namaste.
Namaste.
Bye-bye.